Michelle, this week's episode just happens to fall on Memorial Day.
Right.
It also happens to fall on the official real Star Wars Day, the anniversary of when Star Wars, aka A New Hope, episode 4,
right,
came out. So we figured, hey, maybe we can tie those two things together.
What a mashup.
What a mashup. And when you're talking about Star Wars mashups, well, we absolutely had to bring aboard our wonderful, wonderful friends who do a fantastic Star Wars podcast. Of course, we're talking about Pat and Charles from the ConverSWations Podcast. Welcome back to the Hyperion Adventures Podcast, guys.
Hello. Hey, how are you? It's so nice to be here. Thank you for having us.
Oh,
Sorry, I was just looking for one of our, you said fantastic episodes?
Yeah.
All right. You say so. Still looking.
We may even reference some today.
Oh, look
Oh,
out.
boy.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
As one of the 3 people that actually listen to the ConverSWations Star
Our
Wars podcast,
our
Michelle.
listenership is about to double, you guys.
Michelle definitely knows her stuff.
As
She
we
did
all know,
research.
she always does the best research.
There you go.
Well, guys, it's really good to see you. Thanks for joining us today. This is going to be a lot of fun. Before we get into the topic, I just want to hear a little bit about how you're doing, how the podcast is doing, aside from the 3 listeners we joke about. How are things going in the Star Wars world for the ConverSWations guys?
It's going fantastic. We're still, cranking out the episodes, still working on commercials. We got a couple we got to still get some help with. We'll see if we can recruit some people. But yeah, it's been going great. The community that we've become a part of is just, it goes without saying that's the fun part of it. We have a blast recording. We put them out there and we get the feedback, but it's really that tight-knit community that we're part of that makes it so much worth it.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that we're kind of behind on is like the 3D printing and our t-shirt designs. But aside from that,
true.
everything is running like a well-oiled bath machine.
Nice.
And
gotta
Michelle
fire
is
that
currently
printer.
wearing one of
Yes,
your
I'm sporting.
t-shirts.
Yes.
Oh, there we go.
Teamed work, I love
The
it.
Steamboat Wookiee.
Steamboat
Yes.
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 Featuring
Such a good
Chewie.
one.
And super soft.
Mhm.
Nice, good quality
Yeah.
t-shirt. There you go.
It is.
Yep.
It is.
Yep.
Adorable and comfortable.
And Pat called it steamed wook because before we found our Etsy solution, we had our last stop. We uploaded all of our t-shirts with non-Star Wars keywords, so it was anything but Star Wars. So steamed wook
Don't
was
tell anybody.
Brilliant.
Our 10 listeners might let that sneak out. So, we,
Oh.
10, double digits.
yes.
How do you do it?
Well, apparently, Lucasfilm and Disney must listen to you all.
Oh.
I mean, what
Well-
if they're kind of cutting some of your
Or Scott's
swag?
tipping them off.
It's Scott. That's it.
Scott,
Might be. He's their inside man.
then obviously your creations become part of the Star Wars universe at some point in time. So
That'd be
they're
fantastic.
listening. They like
Oh,
you.
boy. Is that what that cease and desist was? Okay, perfect. All right, just so we're all on the right page.
It's a sign of
Keep
affection.
doing
Come
it. Got it.
So let's go ahead and get into this week's topic. And how can you combine Star Wars and Memorial Day? Well, Michelle, tell us what this ingenious topic is that you've come up with for our friends today.
Well, I actually thought, now would be a good time to remember fallen Star Wars heroes and kind of look at some of the storylines of Star Wars with some of these fallen heroes, and how does that kind of parallel with the real world here?
Great idea.
Well, Michelle's always had the best topics, so
Oh boy.
I'm sure it's going to be fantastic. So go ahead, Michelle.
Well, I do want to point out this could end up being such a solemn conversation. We don't want it to be.
It's no Star Wars what if.
Yeah.
Yes.
But
I don't know. But we do want to at times, lighten it up. So just be ready for maybe some lighter topic questions that are not as deep as the concepts with remembering fallen heroes. So,
Oh boy. Oh boy.
yeah.
Right.
I mean, I guess we could even start with one to kick it off.
Hey, let's go.
Oh,
All right.
Let's go.
Okay.
All right. So all you guys can answer this. So if you had to choose a Star Wars hero as your wingman or wingwoman in a galactic bar, who would you pick and why?
A wingman in a bar?
Yes.
All right, let me tell you something. This is how this is going to go down. All right. It's Obi-Wan Kenobi. And I'll tell you why. Because do you see that cat in Mos Eisley in that bar? He knew how to handle himself. All right. So Ponda Baba comes up and starts trouble with Luke. He's got his back right off the bat. Okay.
Right, okay.
So there's that. Secondly, see how suave he goes in there and talks to Han Solo? He basically got a chartered ship to Alderaan for nothing.
This is true.
Yes.
He's a smooth cat, right? So that happens, and he's good in the bar fight. So who else would you want as your wingman in a bar?
That's a good one.
Wait,
Good
was that
point.
the question?
Yeah.
It's a good point.
Yeah.
I just started thinking about who I'd hang out in a bar with.
Yeah.
But all right. I
All
mean,
right.
cool.
Well, presuming that I'm
Charles?
single, yeah. So presuming I'm single, because if I'm not, and my, Bernadette would find out, I'd be dead. But so let's just presume this is a long time ago in a
Mostly dead.
galaxy far, far away. I
But not
will
before
actually-
torturing you first, but yes.
Yes, it's true. And bringing me back to life with her nursing skills and then killing me again. Yes, I would actually bring a basket full of porgs, because what wouldn't be attracting
my
more attention
God.
than a little basket of porgs, and all the women would come around and I'll just be hanging out there like, oh yeah, I take care of them. They're my pets. This one is Eenie, Meenie, and Miney and Mo. And yeah, it would be a nut house. So I
There
would
you
be
go.
just like the puppy, the fabled puppy.
Yeah,
is
you're
the
the guy
porg.
that takes his neighbor's dog to the dog park.
There you go.
That's you. That's you.
Yeah, so porgs, literally my
Good
wingmen.
answer.
Oh boy.
Okay, sweetie.
I'm kind of, and again, assuming I'm single, so please
Yeah,
sweetheart,
I asked the question.
deal with this.
Pass on that one.
looking for a wingman to go with me. The problem with yours, Pat, is that I don't want somebody who's way more handsome than me as my wingman, because that's a big problem right there. Bringing Obi-Wan Kenobi, especially you and McGregor Obi-Wan Kenobi over there. Maybe Alec Guinness Obi-Wan Kenobi, okay. You and McGregor, that's a problem. I'm going to go kind of along the same lines as Charles here. I think I'm going to invite BB-8 to bring my wingman, because I feel like he's just cute enough to bring him over, and he can roll around pretty quickly and kind of attract them over to you. And then, he's just be very cute and hands up, and he'd give you the thumbs up when it's a good to go. Like, when you never really know, like, am I making any progress with this Twi'lek? He'd be like, yeah, thumbs up, you got it.
I knew he was the Twi'lek guy. I knew it.
Oh man, all great answers, and this really is kicking it off very finely. Loving it. All right, so let's get down to the topic of remembering fallen Star Wars heroes, and kind of starting at a macro level on the topic. Which Star Wars film or TV series do you feel has the most powerful portrayal of a fallen hero, and why?
Why don't you start with this, Charles, with this one?
Okay. So to dial the sadness to 11, I'm going to go with Rebels, and I'm going to bring up Kanan Jarrus. I think it was one of the most powerful scenes of sacrifice, and it really speaks to the heroism and what he's doing. He's sacrificing not just for his found family, but for the betterment of the galaxy and the Rebel Alliance at that point. And such a poignant part of it, sad. I've told the story before, but as I watched the Clone Wars and finished those, Pat's like, "Great job, kid. Now start watching Rebels." And when I got to that point, I was literally on the treadmill, and it was a sopping mess. I could not believe the impact of that sacrifice that he did, and the look and the animation and the powerful the music, everything. It was like a real movie. And having invested so much time with the character, it was just extremely touching.
All right.
Pat, what do you think?
So
Sorry.
why are we doing this? So
Remember, this is the background. This is just like which series or movie. We haven't even gotten into the actual characters.
Oh,
Right.
whoops.
No,
So-
what you said was fine. No, you did fine. You did fine because I know there's going to be more coming from you.
Oh,
Okay,
boy.
Pat.
Yeah. Well, so to kind of parallel that, I think season 7 of the Clone Wars has some pretty impactful scenes, after Order 66, and sort of how everything goes down and turns into a bleep show. There's like mass casualties, and you've spent films and years of television, and then a break from that series, and then more of it. So overall, you've got all of this time that you've invested in these characters that are, barely like blips in the films, and then you see them perish, and just the way that the show conveys that loss on behalf of the other characters, and you as the audience, as the viewer, it's really very powerful.
I agree with both of you. Rebels, that Kanan Jarrus scene is so heart wrenching and and tough, and it's such a sacrifice by him. That's amazing. Clone Wars all the way through, there are so many moments of sacrifice that you get to know the clones themselves so much and understand what their personalities are, that they exist. They were just created to basically fight for the Republic, but they're more than that. And you understand that as you get to know them and their individualities and everything about them. And as they go through this and end up sacrificing themselves in what is supposed to be the greater good, whether it is, whether it isn't, that's very much up for debate in the Clone Wars, which is part of it as well. But then even, without a character actually even passing on, Ahsoka Tano leaving the Jedi Order when she did
Oh, wow.
is
Yeah.
such a sacrifice and such a poignant moment and an important moment in the series, that it makes it the loss of that is intriguing and interesting and makes for such a turn and says so much about the Jedi at that time.
Very good. All right. So I think you've all kind of touched on some of your favorites, but just in case you haven't, or if you have some others, what are some other memorable fallen heroes in the Star Wars saga? And maybe share, why do you think their sacrifices are impactful?
Pat, you want to take this one first?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, there are several. But I guess really, when Tom was mentioning the clones, you've got CT 5555, or fives, as he's known. And so basically, he was the clone recon commando who linked up with Echo after an attack on their station, and they found their way into the 501st. And so basically, through a malfunctioning inhibitor chip on behalf of Top, he looked into that and really was going to be a very crucial part of uncovering that plot and and despite everyone along the way trying to dismiss it or quiet him, he literally did everything he could to convey that information, that there was, something wrong with one of his brothers, and he almost got that intel to Anakin, and he made the ultimate sacrifice because of it.
Mm.
Very good point.
Yeah.
Charles?
I would say, well, the entire cast of Rogue One. I mean,
Mhm.
you go into that story knowing just first how such an amazing movie it is, and you know what's happening. You know these characters are nowhere else in the Star Wars after that movie. But then you start watching this thing, and then you're completely enthralled with the story. And then by the time it ends, and their entire sacrifice, all of them die to get the plans for the Death Star off of Scarif. And like I remember seeing it the first time. It's like you forget. It's like, oh my God, that's right. They're dead. They're gone. Oh, and that impact is huge because, of course, they did get the plans off, and then we go off into A New Hope, and they were so steadfast, and like Jin especially, in their belief that their sacrifice was so worthy of a cause that they pulled all those other ones with them, and they sacrificed what they could do, make 10 men seem like 100, and also then more from Yavin came. So their belief in the rebel cause literally saved the galaxy, and that's a huge sacrifice.
Yeah, excellent.
Agreed. I mean, that's the Rogue One was where I was going to go originally. Specifically, I was going to go with the first one of that crew that dies, and that's K2SO, who I think I know that is so impactful, especially basically just giving himself up, locking and basically saying goodbye to Cassian and Jin, and because he knew that I have to make this final stand to allow them to be able to get these plans and get out, and even telling them to climb. That's a big part. But let's since you already mentioned the Rogue One crew, which they should have a statue built in all their honors because for the New Republic, because their sacrifice was huge. I'm going to go with Anakin Skywalker himself, Darth Vader, sacrificing himself essentially to save his son and move forward, and toss the Emperor over the side, and it took everything he had to fight off, everything, all the dark side that was in him at that point. But, just like Luke said, there was still good in him. There was still Anakin Skywalker in him, and he was there, and he pulled it through, and, the Rebel Alliance wins, and Luke Skywalker survives because of that sacrifice.
Right. Excellent.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So thinking of these examples that you just gave, how do you think their legacies actually inspire us to, in our day, in our world, remember the fallen in service on Memorial Day? Kind of the parallel.
Well, Star
ahead.
Wars, impacts me every day. So, but
I didn't notice that from behind you there.
Yeah.
It's true, believe it or not.
All the Star Wars memorabilia behind him stacked to the ceiling.
Exactly. I do have Kanan back here, by the way.
Right.
Nice.
Obi-Wan, I have Anakin, and because Tom had mentioned Anakin or Darth Vader, after his sacrifice, Luke honored him very specifically by dragging him in that suit onto the shuttle to get him off the Death Star, and then he memorialized him in a private ceremony on the farthest moon of Endor after that battle, and before he met back up with the rebels. So he sort of had his own private reconciliation with his father, with meeting his father in the way that he did, and then being able to break through to him and then seeing the good in him, like Tom said, and then really honoring him with like a fallen hero service of his own, which mirrors back to when Qui-Gon died in the Phantom Menace. And you've got a very intentionally very similar situation. However, with Qui-Gon's death, you had many dignitaries from Naboo, some Gungans and various Jedi, and all these people were there to participate in his very public funeral. But it's to each their own. Like the Qui-Gon one was very sort of outward, like expression of, hey, this fallen Jedi needs to be honored. Whereas Anakin's was a personal journey for Luke.
Mm.
Good point.
Charles, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the way that translates for me is, the types of memorials that we like, physical memorials like Normandy, and
Right.
the rows of the crosses there and all the soldiers and the memorials that are there that you can visit and honor and remember them, whether you're a family member of a serviceman or woman or not. It's still an honor to be in that space. I mean, that's a sort of bucket list for me to do that. But in Star Wars, there actually was that first battle memorial that they put up in honor of that battle on Geonosis, and that to me is a direct translation of the type of, aside from the warlike memorial that it was, it really brings a space where we even saw that in the Bad Batch. I think it was season 2 when they were there. And so having that tie to a physical outside world of a place where there's a remembrance of those who died, you can still visit it and remember it and honor them. Like I said, even if you're not a clone or you don't have a family member, it's extremely important to keep that memory alive.
Pat, I want to point out to yours that I think it's interesting also with Luke honoring his father, honoring Anakin, who he was Anakin at that point. That's the only way it could have happened because of the way the universe felt about him. No one else felt about him the way Luke felt about Darth Vader, about Anakin at that point. Even Leia struggled with it afterwards. If you read any of the books afterwards, she struggled with knowing that Darth Vader was her father, especially what he put her through at certain points. So that was the only way that could have happened, but it is perfectly touching. I'm going to build a little bit on Charles too, and some of the remembrances of the Battle of Geonosis. I'm going to go back to Clone Wars season 7, near the end there, and despite moments before, the fact that all those clone troopers were out to try and stop Ahsoka and Rex because the chip wasn't affecting them. Still, they had to place them in a spot of honor after they passed after the ship. And so they kind of put them out there, basically a grave site with their helmets on posts to kind of honor them. Like I said, despite that they were willing to kill them moments before because that's what they had chip in their head. So no, they were brothers, compatriots. They were everything to them, and they wanted to respect them despite that. And I thought that was a very touching moment at the end of that episode, at the end of that season.
Right. Oh, very excellent. Well, I think, Charles, unless you have another answer, you already told us your most gut-wrenching example of and how it affected you. I don't know if you have another one or Pat.
No, well, yeah, I did. Well, there's several, but I'll stick with that one. Yeah, that I jumped the gun on that one, but yeah, that was a heavy one, and like I said, that sacrifice hits me every time I see it.
Right. Pat, do you have what you would classify as your most gut-wrenching?
Oh boy.
Example,
well,
and how it impacted you when you watched it.
I try not to watch that one because it just is so emotionally charged. But all of the animation, as we've all said before, has enriched all these characters for us, so that when things do happen, it's got that emotional component tied to it. I think one of the most surprising losses would have been Qui-Gon Jinn in The Phantom Menace. You've got Liam Neeson as a Jedi, which you're like, all right, cool, and then you get the soundtrack and you're like, wait, what? Because it's the title is
Yes. Yeah.
um, but yeah, whoops. So to see that, it's like, oh, I guess that's how that's happening now. And so that one is kind of blindsided, whereas the Kanan episode, what's going to happen, and he knows, and so to kind of be aware of that in the moment and to know that it's coming is I think a lot worse as a viewer, but it's also way more impactful as a sacrifice, because he knew what he had to do to keep everyone safe and keep them moving, and they had time to protest and to plead with him to get back on the ship and all these things, so that I think that's more gut-wrenching than anything, is to consciously make that decision and then have your family say, no, there's got to be another way, and you just know that this is what has to be done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with you on the Kanan. It's a tough moment to go through. I'll go back to my Ahsoka comment from earlier when she leaves the Jedi Order. That gets me every single time. It's such emotional. Anakin pleading with her to stay, but her telling him basically, why I have to do this. And Anakin's, also knowing that she's probably right in that regard. But what wrecks me more than anything else is the final battle in Revenge of the Sith between Obi-Wan and Anakin, because that's a death of so many things. It's the death, at least temporarily, of Anakin Skywalker, and it's the death of their brotherhood, and especially is it like you discussed, Pat, of watching the animated series. Like, I don't know if it impacted me so much the first time I saw it. I mean, of course, the music and the battle and everything, it built it up. It is strong. But after really delving into what they meant to one another, what you do in the Clone Wars, and finding out more about them, you get to that battle, and I struggle to watch that film now, because it just ruins me every time you get to that part, because I just want it to end differently, and it never does, and it shouldn't, but it never does. But I want it to, because I love both those characters so much.
Yes, into a choose your own adventure.
Yes. Please, Anakin, don't kill me.
Kill my brother, Anakin. Let's go get a beer.
Understand he has the high ground and say, okay, you got the high ground. I get it.
I have the high ground. All right. Would you like my ladder? Helps him up because he's a good guy.
But yeah, that I struggle with that film so much because of that now. I think that'd be it for me.
Yeah. Well, I think it's time to lighten the mood a little bit here, huh? Don't you
Oh,
say?
boy. Thank gosh.
To get a little breather from all this gut wrenching. Yes.
You guys need
Family,
some-
love, all that. Yeah. All right. So Star Wars obviously is known for epic battles and intense duels, kind of like the one you discussed on your podcast on episode 131 that came out recently.
It was an epic duel.
Epic duel. Can never
So epic,
see
you
that
guys.
again the same way.
It's his fault.
But
It's Form 5. It's Form 5's fault.
that's right.
The aggressive form.
By the way, just so you all know, the duel that we're talking about is the duel between Yoda and R2D2 in Empire Strikes Back. It's like a 15-second
Flashlight
duel.
fight.
And you can't, once you hear the episode, you can't watch that portion again without absolutely cracking up, because you guys did such a masterful job of framing that duel. It's so funny.
It's on the level of how Family Guy has impacted how we watch Star Wars, right?
Wow. High praise.
Wow.
You and Peter Griffin, you're right there with one another.
Okay, but here's your question. Thinking about duels and epic battles, if you could choreograph a dance-off instead of a fight scene between two characters, who would you choose to compete, and what type of dance would they showcase?
Oh man.
Ooh.
Okay. So who are the two people competing? Am I competing against one, or it's two
No,
other?
the two characters.
Okay.
I'll start off with this one while you guys think, if that's all right.
Oh,
He
boy,
didn't have
that's-
any of the questions other
Yeah.
than what you
Okay.
had in
Yeah,
advance. so-
right.
But you said dance, so Tom's ready.
So yes, jazz hands are set.
He's like, are there costume changes? Because I
So-
am in.
Speaking of costumes and outfits, I think the perfect costumes and outfits for a dance-off have got to be between Maul and Ahsoka, because you put them out there together in their outfits, man, and they are so acrobatic. You know that's going to be a dance-off to save the galaxy. I'm sorry, Guardians of the Galaxy. Put those two together, man, and it is just starshine. It's going to be great.
I feel like they need to have a Star Wars on Ice.
Whoa.
Like,
Oh, now it's happening.
6 months
Now
from
it's-
now,
Hi,
buy your
Lucasfilm.
tickets.
I come up with the idea, and I'm going to shell out $112 a ticket to take my kid to see it. Oh boy. All right. Well, so when I think of form and style, I think Asajj Ventress
Mm.
would
Ooh.
be a worthy opponent to a smooth talking scoundrel Lando Calrissian. And I feel like they would do like some classic sort of salsa
Oh,
dancing.
nice.
And I feel
Okay.
like that's a tough one. I feel like athletically Asajj might have it, but there's something about that smooth Lando, and I think he just might take the win.
Perfect. Okay, Charles, look what you have set
Okay.
up for you.
Look what,
Yeah.
what have you done?
So style-wise, I'm thinking that
R2D2.
no, no, he's the light show. Actually, R2D2 is like the light system that would be lighting the background. No, I'm gonna go with
Mount a disco ball on his head, it'd be good.
And of
Exactly.
course, and he would take all the clips that he's got in his memory banks, and he would do
Oh,
like
yeah.
some cool like DJ effects, right?
Nice. Yes,
Yes.
You're
absolutely.
hearing all this,
absolutely.
Lucasfilm.
Help me, Obi-Wan, drop the beat.
Speaking of street songs and maybe new age dance, I'm gonna take Yoda versus Dooku, and with all those
Oh.
acrobatics, and their
Mm.
lightsabers are actually used as props to spin around, spin
Nice.
through, and
Like
some of
the
the
old
larger
cane.
pieces. Yeah, exactly. There you go. There you go. And some hip hop songs going in the background. You got them jumping around, using the environment because there's like the big shafts up there. You can jump on those, drop them off. It'd be fantastic. That'd be a great show, actually. And again, with R2 in the background, providing the beats and the light show. It's perfect.
Oh man, you all are exceeding my expectations of being
Don't
amazing.
be too proud of this techno tip.
This week on Dancing with the Star Wars.
Ah,
Wow.
yeah.
Again, you're welcome, Lucas.
Disney
You're
Plus.
welcome.
Disney Plus.
Okay. So you had your little reprieve. Now we're getting back to the topic.
Ah, crap.
I know. Got to get to the heart touch, right? All right. Let's talk about Bad Batch. I know there's been a little chatter about it already. And for those listeners who might not know, they're that unique group of clone troopers that had a genetic mutation. So my question for you guys is, how does their story explore the themes of loyalty and identity in the context of war?
I can start with this one.
Okay.
Yeah, all right, go for it.
So that's the nature of the Bad Batch, right? The clone 99s, where like they were these imperfect clones. And so while the clones themselves are all brothers, literally, they're clones of each other. I think that the Bad Batch are even more so ingrained because they were rejected as a batch of clones. So that just formed that strength between them even stronger. And while good clones follow orders, even within that tight-knit group, we saw what's his name?
Crosshair?
Sniper. Crosshair, thank you. Crosshair. Sort of take his own path, which was, following the right orders, or what he deemed the right orders. So he left the clones, and then eventually, spoiler alert, at the end of the current season, he comes back to them after much ado. I think that really does speak to the band of brothers, that element where you're away together and you're fighting the fight, and it brings you closer. But them as a unit are linked by that moniker, as it were, the Bad Batch, but they're not. They're in fact superior in many ways, which is the good side of that group.
Right. Excellent. Pat?
So Tech. We have to talk about Tech.
Yeah.
Tech was, he made a very similar sacrifice to Kanan, where he knew what he was doing, and Plan 99, and they were like, "Don't do it," and he's like, "I'm doing it." And then his glasses were recovered from the scene, and Star Wars has a way in these epilogues of just pooling on everything that they've developed, and they did it with the Rebels epilogue, and they did it again in the Bad Batch, where Omega is going off to fight with the rebellion, and she jumps in her ship, and she's got his glasses up in the at the panel there on the flight deck, and it's just another reminder. This is some likely 10 years later, and that's still there for her to kind of remember, not only who she's lost personally, but what the batch has lost and what the rebellion is fighting for.
Excellent.
I think it was one thing about, and those are both great points, with the Bad Batch that you look at when you first are introduced to them in season 7 of the Clone Wars. You find out that they're this unique group, and you find out more about them. But they were one, because I think they were kind of excluded from the regular clones because they were different. But also they realized they were superior to the regular clones in so many ways. As a team, they kind of needed every single part to kind of play within this role. But as you see them progressing through, they even called the regular clones regs, because they saw them differently. They didn't even call them like, their brothers or whatever. They all, despite they were. So you see the development from there, and then into the Bad Batch itself, and the appreciation from them to there, that maybe we're not the same, and maybe we were looked upon differently, but we are still brothers. And so much so that we spend the last season, or at least a portion of the last season, part of the goal of doing that was to save their brothers from Tantus, essentially. It's like they were looking for, they were looking to get Omega out, of course, but they were also looking to save their brothers in any way possible, along with Echo, who's been teaming up with Rex and so forth. So I feel like they grew in so many ways throughout that series. Just as that series grew, when it first started, I was like, okay, it's fine. It's good Star Wars. I like Star Wars. It's good. I'm going to enjoy it. But man, just like all the animated series, man, when they start getting into it, they grow and they get into deeper storylines, and it's just always so impressive. And the Bad Batch was no different. It was much better in season 2 and season 3 than it was even in season 1. And they just did such a wonderful job of developing these characters and developing what their mission was and why they exist. I thought it was another fantastic job. And I think it was important for everybody's growth, including Omega's, who grew to find out more and more about these people around her and excelled to where she is and now ready to go fight for the rebellion at the end. Spoiler alert, too late.
Yeah.
Awesome. Great answers. Okay, let's talk about Saw Gerrera. Okay. Now,
Wow.
Okay.
So we see him, going from like an idealistic rebel to an extremist leader. Some may even say he's an anti-hero. So I want to hear from each of you. Would you agree with that? An anti-hero? Or would you have an argument of maybe why he's actually a fallen Star Wars hero?
Thoughts, guys? Anybody? Or should I step it up?
There's no doubt that he is a hero. He certainly was seeking to enact change and to bring down the Empire, which that's heroic for sure. His methods were a little questionable for sure. And a little bit too severely questionable. But he believed that that's what had to be done in order to succeed, in order to bring down this empire. Some would call it terrorism. Others would call it freedom fighting. I think it depends on how big this threat is versus that threat. And so it's like, is this guy on the fringe? For sure. But is what he's doing going to be that catalyst for change, to spark the rebellion and to sort of galvanize these star systems against the Empire? Maybe. But that's kind of what his line of thinking was. Is this Empire was so tyrannical that you need that wake up call of some some act that just kind of brings the galaxy's attention to what's happening and then brings them all together to fight it.
Good.
I think that I agree with 100% with Pat, and I think that too, that Saw Gerrera represented what the rebellion needed to do but didn't want to. With the ends of what he was going to do. And I think that makes him a fallen hero, because while he may have been ostracized for those things, the ends and justifying the means and everything, but we even see in Rogue One, we come back to that again, save the rebellion, save the dream. In his last moments, his dream was for the galaxy to be free of the Empire. And the methods that he used certainly weren't conventional, but they moved the needle. And with that type of player out in the field, you can never know what's going to happen, right? So you have to account for that as the Empire as well. So there's the real world aspect of that, is that it makes you stronger by having those who are so passionate about what they need to do and the ways they do it. It ultimately leads to the victory. So I think he's very much a fallen hero.
Yeah, he's an interesting character. You see him develop he always had a little bit of an edge to him, even when we first meet him in the Clone Wars. It progresses as we meet him a few other times throughout in various series, so forth, until we finally see him in Rogue One, and he's pretty much an extremist completely at that point. But it was an important thing to show, because you can't show, this is war. You can't show that everything is good, everything is bad. There is a gray area in there, and that's very much where Saw Gerrera lived it, especially the last few years of his existence, was in that gray area of it's for a good purpose, but I'm doing some really, really bad things. But he also, to Charles's point is, he also did some things like he broke into this is in Rebels, he broke into a broadcast with Mon Mothma and told her, look, you need to step this up. You cannot just negotiate your way to peace here. You need to fight. You need to get a little of the edge that I have. Maybe not that much, but you need to have that Mon Mothma fight in you. And arguably, it changed a little bit of what the Rebels did from that point forward. They never went as extreme completely as what we saw from Saw Gerrera, but they knew that they needed to do something a little bit more. And so, yes, off the wall, crazy, completely, did some terrible, terrible things. Yes. But yes, an anti-hero, a fallen hero. I agree.
Right. Yeah. And I like how you all kind of, in a similar way, talked about how his actions were really necessary to, as you said, move the needle and things like that. And I think that sometimes in stories that we see about war, you don't always get to see that, the gray, that it's not all good and all bad. It's that gray.
Yeah, and the Andor series did a really good job of that, peeling back that. I mean, the entire series so far, the first season was about those seedy dealings and those, we painted both the good guys, quote unquote, and the bad guys, and how they treat the people they work with, but also how the empire is working at that time and taking advantage of it and dinking and dunking, to make it work.
Right. Okay, this next question is just for Pat and Charles.
Oh,
I know.
Costume change for Tom.
I know. So this one, I actually was very much inspired by your Star Wars Day episode, where you play Star Wars characters in the roles of films. And for those of you listening who haven't caught that one yet, you must. It is a gem of a episode. So check it out. Okay, guys. Thinking of the famous scene with Marlon Brando in Streetcar Named Desire, could either or both of you give us your best Saw Gerrera impression reacting to the death of his sister in battle?
Wow.
Oh, boy. Well, I mean, I guess.
Give it a shot.
I haven't really done a Forrest Whitaker in a while. So
in a while. It's like Wednesday.
In a while. Yeah. I haven't done it in at least 20 minutes. It's so ridiculous. But I like where you're going, because it's not Stella, but it's
or you could do I'm glad we did a video of this. Okay, you got
right. Yes. Okay. Yeah. All right. Fine.
I mean, come on. Saul was upset.
Yes. Saul's always upset. Okay. He needs to chew a couple Xanax. All right. Have a death stick or two. All right. Steeler.
Excellent. Bravo.
Okay. Okay.
Steeler. Because of the CPAP.
Just noticed how you took a little sauce, a little, nap there. You had to take a little couple breaths before he went. Yeah.
Yeah. That, we're not quite sure what vape he was using there, but probably had a little bit of a higher nicotine content, perhaps, than most.
That was awesome. Oscars to you both.
Wow.
I'd like to thank Hyperion Adventures. Oh, no, okay.
I have a top 5 people I'd like to list.
Oh no,
7.
Here, the music's
Honorable
playing us
mentions.
off already.
I have 2 separate lists.
Gosh. All right, back to the topic, guys. All right. Are there any lesser known or underrated fallen heroes that you feel could get some more recognition for what they've done in Star Wars?
Of course there are. Everyone talks about what Queen Amidala had done for Naboo's freedom and for the democracy throughout the galaxy, but she had helped with General Kenobi and Commander Cody and their troops to find clone troopers that had been taken as POWs. And shortly before her death, she was working on some motions to conceptualize clone personhood. Because with the idea that the war would at some point end, what about all of these clones? Like, and where do their lives begin, and what are their rights and that sort of thing? So she was very forward thinking with all of that, and not only speaking in Senate meetings and stuff, but she was really working behind the scenes to give these clones better lives. And I don't think that's really explored much at all in any of the films, and it's certainly worth noting.
Excellent. Charles?
I'm going to bring up another subject that certainly many people, and Pat especially, doesn't like talking about, but Satine Kryze. She was the pacifistic ruler of Mandalore. She rose to power after the horrendous Mandalorian Civil War, and we know from what we've seen in the Clone Wars and Mando and everything that the warring factions and extremely militaristic, that's even a word, civil galactic, expanding everywhere. That's what it ruled them, right? And she ushered in the rebuild of Mandalore and saw like one of their highest peaks of citizenry and exploration and all that, and she kept Mandalore neutral in the Clone Wars. She was steadfast against that, and she wouldn't pick a side, obviously, and she became a pawn in Maul's revenge of Obi-Wan. And I think that sacrifice wasn't at her hand, but she kept Mandalore from as much as she could from the atrocities of what was going on in the Clone Wars. And ultimately she was killed as almost as a throwaway, but it really isn't. It's such a huge moment, and sad, of course, and extremely touching. And the way Obi-Wan reacts, I think that's what she stood for Mandalore, more so than her being killed by Maul, is really something to take note of.
You guys picked a couple great ones. I'll just go with something that's basically pretty much unknown, slightly known. Many Bothans died to get us this information. How about the poor Bothans that got the information to help them, get Death Star 2 blown up? Was it a setup? Maybe not, but the Bothans did fight that. I'll also go back to a little bit of what, we'll go to episode 1. We just went and saw that again just a little bit ago, to go see it on the big screen again. It was so great to go see it on the big screen again. But how about all the Gungans that basically fought to distract so they could go in and retake the throne room and shut down the Trade Federation there. You don't really see it, but they knew there are several Gungans that lost their lives in that battle. So that was really, really important. And they were willing, as Boss Na said, we so willing to do Asapat.
Nice.
Well done,
Hey.
honey.
We can't forget about Bulio. I mean, he literally lost his head over it.
Julio.
Oh, too soon. Sorry. Win
Poor
the
Bulio.
war.
In the wall.
And we all know who voiced that character, right?
Michelle doesn't.
I don't.
Oh.
That's,
maybe
Mark
I do.
Hamill. It was Mark
Oh, that's
Hamill.
right. Now that you
Yeah.
say that, I remember that. Yep.
Yes.
All I
All
heard was,
right.
I don't. He's whispering.
I don't want to admit it.
All right. Getting close to the end here now.
Oh, boy.
In what ways do you think Star Wars handles the themes of sacrifice and heroism differently from other sci-fi fantasies or franchises?
Well, I'll go.
Okay.
I think that there are real emotions tied to the sacrifice of the heroes in Star Wars. It's not contrived. We go back to Kanan, and you look at the aftermath of that, where the Rebels crew is just sort of in shock, in a bit of a depression after Kanan's gone. They're all aboard the Ghost and just like, what just happened? And then of course, with him being a Jedi and a mentor, it's it touches on what he did with training Sabine and Ezra with their respective Darksaber and Ezra's Jedi skills, and then his good buddy Zeb, and then his gal Hera. So he really had a very close relationship with every member of that team, and with his loss, you see them go through those emotions, and to kind of stay in that same theme with the Bad Batch, you see probably the only emotion from Wrecker, aside from like joy and chaos, is when Tech is gone. And so these things that are usually kind of glossed over in many films, war films and all, because they don't have the time to like go into the psyche and the mental stability after a loss. You get to see that in such a real way.
Good answer.
For me, I think a lot of the heroes that we see in the Star Wars saga. I mean, there's many, and we've brought up so many today. But a lot of them that I think about as a tribute to the fallen heroes are the Jedi, and it's the Force Ghost. That's such a unique aspect of the franchise. And we can still translate the Force Ghost as like a memory of, let's say, of a fallen hero, or let's say an uncle or a brother or whatever. As in the real world, you hear their voices even after they're long dead. They're still trying to guide you through your life and help you through moments. But the Force Ghosts, like we see in Return of the Jedi, right? We see Obi-Wan, we see Anakin, and then we see Yoda, and Luke looks back at them, and he's seeing them, and these are the heroes that passed way before him and sacrificed things way before he did, yet they're still present for him. And then of course we see that in the future as well, and Luke Skywalker becomes one, and Yoda revisits him. So the sense of the idea of a Force Ghost is allowing those who have made an ultimate sacrifice and then learned how to transcend that, really does elevate them beyond just a tribute and a memory. It's an action that is really quite unique.
Good answer.
So, recently you guys were at MegaCon with us, and unfortunately you weren't there for this day, but we were there and we got to experience this. It was, the panel with Anthony Daniels there. And he walked through the crowd and he went through the crowd. And one of the first questions he asked was, what does Star Wars mean? What is Star Wars about, essentially? And various people had different answers. And I do believe that Star Wars is what Star Wars is about. What Star Wars means is different to everybody. But to me, there's two things that Star Wars is about. It's about family and it's about hope. And I feel that, these sacrifices, the losses are so much more impactful because of the fact that you build up so much importance in the families that are involved, whether it be found families, whether it be actual real blood families, and the hope of having things go better, that we can keep striving forward and making the right changes and things will eventually be better. I feel that the fact that Star Wars as a franchise is so focused on that it makes all these things that much more impactful personally.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
All right. Excellent responses. So we have one more question. And that is, how do you think the concept of honoring fallen heroes in Star Wars can resonate with real life experiences and the importance of remembering those lost?
I think for me, I'm going to go back to what we talked about a little bit before, whereas the memorials that we have, let's say for World War II or, September 11th, there's so many of these places that have been erected to, not that we're collectively ever going to forget them, but it brings you into that moment. And like I said, with the first battle memorial that's in the Clone Wars, those things provide touchstones and sort of a moment of reality, and very important to keep those things strong, because not like I said, not we're all going to forget about World War II or September 11th or any of the conflicts that we've all lived through. Having that moment of realization and almost that moment of silence because you're there brings them back to life to a certain degree, and it's a great honor. And like I said, even if you don't know them, that's not the point. The point is to honor them for what they did for us.
Oh, very great. Pat?
Yeah, and I think that's really the takeaway is that these sacrifices were made for something. It was a specific goal that they were trying to do. In this case, to secure freedom throughout the galaxy, and that's what every service person has done since the beginning of war. So you've got whether they're drafted or enlisted, anything like that. It's with enlisted soldiers, it's I've felt this calling, and I want to make a change for the better based on what I believe. And even my father was drafted into Vietnam, and it wasn't his design to go to war, but when he was called upon to do so, it's like, this is something that I need to do, to serve my country, to honor what my country stands for, and sort of take on that responsibility. And then obviously for others that ended up dying in the process, it's under that whole mantle of giving up everything for a worthy cause.
Great answer. Sweetie?
And, absolutely, when we're talking about war, of course, what you both said is very important, but I'm even going to take it a step farther and move it on to the first responders that are out there too, because, and I believe that this is true in Star Wars, you know, when it's those soldiers that go and they sign up immediately when there's something that needs to be done, that needs to be helped, and the wrong that needs to be righted. They're there. The people that go out, and you'll see it in tragedy, where when many people are running away from the event, there's those that are running forward towards the event. And so many Star Wars characters are those people that would run towards the event rather than running away from it to try and make things better. And that, like I said, it goes for the servicemen and women. It goes for all the first responders, every one of them who have, especially the ones who have, you know, paid the ultimate sacrifice to make sure others were safe. And that goes for Star Wars as well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Well, you all have done some really amazing work at giving some heartfelt and thoughtful responses. I think it really does help in the concept of the importance of memorializing people who are fallen heroes. And I think I love how you have shed that light within the Star Wars universe and brought it to our world today. So I just want to say thank you all for your great answers. I appreciate you coming on. I will turn it over to my master host here.
Well, just before we get to that, just before that though,
Oh boy.
Michelle has the greatest topics. Michelle has the greatest show, has the greatest lists. We all know she does the greatest research. And she's also, well, Tom's interesting, I guess, to a certain degree. But the Ask Me Anything episode you guys, what was it, a couple of weeks ago? Brought up a very interesting thing that I didn't know, and many people didn't know, that you're a pilot.
This is correct. Well, I was. Okay. I stopped paying for that hobby.
It's an expensive hobby.
That very expensive hobby. Yes. You know, and you know, when you get to some hobbies, you think, okay, do I keep renting or do I purchase? And it's like,
neither.
Yeah. But yeah, I had decided I really had an urge to learn how to fly, so I took lessons. I did some classroom lessons, and then obviously in flight had different instructors, but I learned how to fly. I have done, you know, I got my pilot's license. I started working on and advancing that license, but that's when I decided, you know,
I moved her out to California, and then it all went from there.
I understand you've become quite a good pilot yourself.
So since you're not such a bad pilot yourself, what ship from Star Wars would you like to fly if you had the option to take anything and snatching it from the galaxy far, far away and park it in your backyard? Probably taking another couple of your trees, but what would you choose?
You can't take the garbage heap.
Oh, darn. I think it'd be cool to do a TIE fighter.
Oh, Empire.
Well, I mean, after seeing Poe's reaction, it's like, oh yeah, that's got to be cool.
You and the Star Wives. Empire all the way.
Long live the Empire.
All right, back to Tom. That was it. That was just one little quick question.
Thank you.
The answer is definitely the X-Wing. I like shields and I like life support. I don't want to have to wear
I like life support.
I don't know, but if you've flown in a Cessna for a long time.
You don't need shields if you're good enough, Tom.
That's pretty good point there.
Right.
Or disposable enough, either way.
Two extremes on that one.
Exactly. Oh man.
Well, Michelle, first of all, great topic, great questions. Really enjoyed it. It was, you know, as tough as it is, those are very important and impactful moments. And it's, you know, I think it's important to show how Star Wars, yes, obviously there's the action, there's the excitement, there's the humor, but also there is the emotion and the important parts that make it such a well-rounded franchise and such a well-rounded series. And I think it's good to focus on those sometimes, but also have some fun with it as well. So I'm glad you broke it up a little
Well,
bit.
thank you. And I appreciate you all allowing me to do this episode.
But guys, great answers today. Thanks for joining us so much. Why don't you tell everybody where they can find you? You know, they're all over social media, especially Pat. His ladder,
Sorry.
anyway. His
What's a
ladder's on social
what's a
media.
social media? I don't know. Apparently, we're online. I've yet to discover it because I don't know how these things work. We can be found wherever you listen to podcasts. However, the very best place to find us is
Heard that
we're to
somewhere.
do this in front of Tom.
Yeah, right.
I'm not making fun of you. I swear.
It's an homage.
It is. It's certainly something. Oh boy. So all right. So the very best place to find us is on our own website at ConverSWations.com. We're on Facebook.com/ConverSWations. Oh boy.
We're on Twix. I think we settled on Twix. It's a
We're
good
we're
chocolate
calling
bar.
it Twix. That way we're not on
Nice.
Michelle or Tom's bad side. On Twix, we're at Swations. And
Plus, it's just a darn good cookie.
oh, delicious. That wafer. Oh boy. Enough
Where's
to
the
make
candy bar?
Elon
It's
Musk
cookie candy
happy.
bar.
Yeah, that's the one. We're at ConverSWations on Instagram and also on Threads at ConverSWations over there. CommerceSWations, because you got to pay for it, over on Etsy for our Etsy shop. It's a little play on words. I don't know. Charles
Brilliant.
said clever or something. I don't know.
Very clever.
Whatever. And then if I noticed Tom doesn't have his pen and paper, so if he forgot any of those, they're at link.tree/ConverSWations. All of our fun stuff is there. And you know, until we get kicked out, we are still proud founding members of the Red 5 Podcast Network. Don't tell Ro, because I think he just forgot to spring clean, and we're still in there somehow.
We're still in his contact list somehow.
He hasn't blocked you yet.
I think he just forgot. I don't know. I mean,
We-
that
we may be
Cinco de
the only
Mayo
pod-
stuff was rough.
The Red 5 Network, that still exists. All right. Founding
I
members,
heard
be
the
whatever
Red
you
5
want to
Network
be.
was all but extinct.
I think we're the only podcast that pays dues. Maybe that's why we're in it.
Hey, wait a minute. Wait, everyone else is doing it for free?
We're smarter than this.
I wondered why we were in the red.
Oh.
Oh boy.
Well, guys, thanks so much for taking your time out of your day. We really appreciate it on this Star Wars Day week / Memorial Day weekend. You know, you guys always bring it, and it's always fun and entertaining. Even in some of the sad stuff, it still is important and fun, and we really appreciate it. Everybody, check out their show if you haven't done it yet. If you're a Star Wars fan at all, even if you just like an entertaining good time, check out the ConverSWations podcast.
They have a podcast?
Yeah, I've heard that. There's no proof to it because I've never listened, but
I just use it as an opportunity to eat chicken burgers.
Scott will love that.
Better. Had some pizza today, Scott. so-
Yeah.
there it is.
Nice.
There it is.
Mhm.
Well, guys, thanks again. Really, really appreciate the time, and can't wait to bring you guys back on the show again sometime very, very soon.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Wow,
Thank
they
you very
still
much for having
haven't
us.
learned their lesson. It's
Never
been
did.
like a bunch of times, and they keep wanting us back.
Maybe when Tom edits the show, he'll get that realization.
He edited it down to just Tom and Michelle. Great episode, guys.
This is that line. We have the high ground.
Oh,
Over Pat, we always do.
Hey,
Michelle does not.
I know.
It's true. That's a good point. She's the one person.
Yes. The one person I can tolerate.
Guys, thanks so much again. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah. Thank you for giving up part of your weekend.
When is the date?